Winterfest concert last night. And on the way in, there was a really gorgeous handmade guitar being raffled. And I liked it. And I bought 5 tickets. And I won. Isn't it something? Look at this. The art of it. Isn't that amazing? There's 10 different kinds of wood. And the fellow who made it, very prominent luthier, made it from all the scraps. So, here we are. Sometimes you win. Odd, huh? Oh, it also includes 8 hours of recording time in a very fancy studio, which I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with that. I think maybe my music teacher will get to use it, but pretty nice. It's interesting, isn't it? And it was for an incredibly good cause. It's called Join. Any of you know about Join? They put 1,000 people a year from the streets in Portland into homes. 1,000 people a year. So please take a moment to turn to your choices. If you'd like to remain silent, you don't have to talk to anybody. It's the Miranda for the Dharma Hall. If you'd like to just stay inward, please do so. But take a moment otherwise to turn to your neighbor, share your name, and one thing that you're grateful for this morning. Just a moment to connect. Isn't it something?
Dim, and it was sitting like this, and I looked. It's not there last week.
All right. Oops. Oh, could you get me a copy of the chants? No, it's fine. Ring the bell, would you? Enjoy that happy chatter, connecting. So since the time of the Buddha, people have been undertaking a practice moment by moment, and sometimes as an initiatory moment of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Modernity would have us take refuge in Costco. In consuming, in fancy this and fancy that, in well, that's clear. And it doesn't really quite work because everything out in the world is impermanent. How can we take refuge in something that is constantly changing? We can, and we do, and then we discover we're disappointed. So there's these ancient chants. I take refuge in the Buddha, in that which is awake, which is Buddha, and in the Dharma, and the way things actually are. And so with our awakeness, we study the world, we study our own internal experience, and we discover how it actually is. Not some theory of it or image of it or fantasy, but this is really how it is. And we do that in the company of our fellow explorers and in the company of those who have explored in the past and experienced some awakening. And then I like to take it out to a really big community, which is the community of all life. That we are the cambium layer of life on the earth. You know, in those giant trees, there's this little tiny layer that's alive. From all time past, all of life, right now we're carrying the spark. And we share it with our colleagues of the air, the earth, and the waters. And that's our true community. So I invite you to join in this kind of a modernized version of the chants of the refuge by Betsy Rose. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. And let's do it once more and think about the meaning of these words. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Greetings and welcome to those of you joining us out in internet land. today and in the future when this is viewed. So here we are, right here. So we can do this ancient undertaking, which is to be present and know that we're present here. And a very simple way to do that is to be embodied, to become aware of this livingness. So to notice where your body touches the cushion or the chair, the floor. To notice the aliveness in your hands. To notice the aliveness in that which you think of as your face. And this quintessential sign of life, to become aware of the fact that this body breathes. To notice that it breathes all by itself. It always has. And how does it show itself? There's an expansion of the lungs, of the chest and abdomen. So you can feel it in the front, in the sides, in the back, solar plexus, chest. It has a beginning, a rising to fullness, a declining, and then it disappears. And most probably you've discovered that the mind doesn't stay so easily with the sensations of breathing. There's a saying in insight meditation circles that the mind has a mind of its own. It's been conditioned. It has habits, memories, plans. It worries. It creates memories of a past and hangs out in there, or fantasies of a future, and often worries about that. But the great discovery of the Buddha 2,600 years ago was that these habits, these conditioned responses of the mind, can be illuminated with that which knows, with the Buddha, with mindfulness. That we human beings are blessed with the capacity of becoming aware of our conditioning and learning to take it less seriously and to the point of ultimately not believing it at all. To truly see thoughts as thoughts, emotions as emotions. To not create someone who has them. So we have this very simple practice. Come home to breathing. Come home to the sensations of breathing. You may notice that the mind wanders a little bit or a lot. Sometimes when mindfulness and concentration are strong, there's a sort of feeling or intuition that arises that a thought is going to form, and then it doesn't even do so. Other times a thought arises and it papanchas, it mentally proliferates. There's more thoughts, and there's reaction to the thought, and then there's emotion, and then there's confusion, and then there's maybe some self-criticism, and then there's awareness. Mindfulness with there's no judgment to it, there's no criticism, there's no evaluation even, it's just, oh yes, that's the wandering mind. Now I take up again the simplicity of breathing in and breathing out.
a.m. V.
There's no room or no need for violence or coercion in the practice. Awareness is truly all-powerful. So there's a tone to each person's practice, each time, each moment. And we're encouraged to practice ahimsa, nonviolence, from the very start. But you may well discover that there's self-criticism or a kind of harshness. Why can't I stop this mind from wandering? Or this is so painful, I just wish it would stop. That kind of thing. All those tonality aspects of experience are just something else to notice. To notice and then to return. To the beautiful simplicity of breathing in and breathing out. Something that can be noticed is that each breath really does have a beginning. It really doesn't exist. And then it gets born. And then it truly does have a time of existence, a lifetime. It's that period when potential is developing and expansion, taking in. And then there really is a moment when breathing in ceases and breathing in begins. Breathing out begins. Breathing in and then out. And then there is a time of breathing out. And then it really does end. And then sometimes there's a pause. Meditation is extremely useful for developing concentration and tranquility and ease, stress management. It's really useful for illuminating our psychological and emotional patterns. They arise as the wandering mind. And each breath is a manifestation of the profound, utter truth of impermanence. If something has a beginning, it has an ending. Our bodies are prone to discomfort. In normal circumstances, we move a lot. We adjust our position. There's a reason for that, which is discomfort. And it's crucial that we move away from discomfort, particularly when it gets severe. But in meditation, we tend to sit still. We tend to tolerate discomfort, and in fact even investigate it really lovingly and thoroughly. Sometimes when discomfort is strong, after a few times of dismissing it, we consciously put aside the breath and then turn toward the pain, turn toward the discomfort, to study what it really is. Is it my discomfort or is it just discomfort? Is there disliking of it? Are there muscles held tight around it? And the Buddha's teachings invite us to notice that the suffering of discomforts is actually arising from unenforceable rules. I don't want it to be like this. This should be pleasant. And so ever so gently and over time we develop the capacity to bear that which was previously unbearable. We become more and more grown up, less having to follow every desire or aversion, liking or disliking. And sometimes we discover that the suffering completely goes out of discomforts. This is the truth of quenching or nirvana, the end of suffering. So there's a willingness to stay sitting still. As an exercise in consciousness growth. Coming home to breathing in and breathing out. Please take a moment to notice the mood which colors consciousness now. To notice if the mind is calm or restless. Is desire or wanting something more prevalent, or perhaps disliking or wanting something not? Is there doubt, uncertainty? Are there emotions? How strong is mindfulness? How prevalent is it in the consciousness stream? How accepting? And now please notice the body where it touches the chair or the cushion or the floor, that contact pressure. Notice the life in the hands. So interesting how much life there is in the hands. The thumb, the index fingers. Notice the life in the lips, cheeks, nose. And then that which we call eyes. Feel the life of the eyes. And notice that it's possible to, with a mere intention, roll the eyes around inside their sockets. And then noticing the prompted intention to open the eyes. And notice that they don't open without some intention and then effort. And then observe as seeing begins. Seeing. Objects appear. Seeing. Seeing. Consciousness of the seeing variety. And then, how might this body like to stretch, and then let that happen, but really stay in that place of observing it, noticing. Staying mindful. Once one really engages in mindfulness practice, there's no more breaks, right? It's just, how conscious can I be? How aware in every activity? I think before I hand the microphone over to Jim and ask him to lead us in movement, there's 2 or 3 things I want to say. One is, last Sunday we had an unfortunate event in which a fellow, this shows up on our videotapes, a fellow entered the building from the front door at 12:37 and 12 seconds. He went into the restroom and was in there for about 30 seconds, and then he came out and was looking around, and then he came in the Dharma hall, and he was in here maybe 20 seconds, and then the door flung open, and he ran out while stuffing money in his pocket. And Paul found a $20 bill on the front porch that he dropped. So there's a photo of him on the front door from the video, which is really for him, in case he comes back and thinks it's open season. He'll discover that it's not a good thing to do. So we're doing a couple of things. It was really interesting watching this community being what it is. My thoughts went almost immediately to, wow, he really needed that money. Imagine stealing money from the Donna Bowl. Karmically not so brilliant. But it was cold last Sunday, and he was wearing a T-shirt. So who knows? But I felt bad for the guy. And I got that from several other people. It's like, oh man, he stole the Donna from the... So there's a certain like, oh no, that's... But then it went quite quickly to, wow. And of course, there are so many of us who are really on the edge or far over the edge. Several people said, well, I hope he used it to get some good food and be warm, and so may he be well cared for with that. So we now have the Donna Bowl up here. And so if you'd like to contribute to that, the bowl was my bowl when I was a monk briefly in Burma 100 years ago, 40 years ago. And that bowl it looks like a Burmese monk's bowl, but it's actually a transformer that converts your dispersible income into Dharma. And you can also do that online. And there will be more to come on this, but we have our end-of-year financials. And if you look at it through one lens, we came out with a deficit of $4,500. However, that last year we also raised $45,000 for the soon, I hope to emerge, ramp for wheelchair access. And so we actually increased our support of the community by almost $40,000 last year. And that's a really great sign, because part of our plan in the next year is to have Gregory Malouf come and start a private practice here, but also to take some of my administrative role from me so that I can teach more. So we're quite capable of it, and the numbers are there, and the way that this happens is through your generosity. So you can join the Stewardship Circle online and contribute that way, or through here, or through volunteering. There's lots of ways to do that. And the need. And a particular need I realize that I have is if there were someone who could do very basic movie editing, like using iMovie and trimming. This right now is going out onto the internet through Ustream. Later today, blessedly, Avi will tweak it and name it and send it out to YouTube. And then it resides in both of those places. It would be really good if someone would pull it down off one of those and simply cut it to the Dharma talk at the end. And then people could tune in and they wouldn't have to fast forward and so on to get through all the morning. We'd have both up. So if you could do that and could commit to doing it for 6 months or so, please let me know. I think that's all for now. Would you like to guide movement?
So here's a mindful movement. I'm walking over to the Donna Bowl, picking out the biggest piece of currency I have and putting it in. You can imitate that anytime you want. right, now we get in touch with our feet and just kind of rock back and forth. Notice how intelligent the body is. I say some word like rock back and forth, and everybody starts practicing. Mindful of weight shift, mindful of contact with the floor, mindful of agency. We can pick up our heels and we can slowly put them down. We can take our hips and make circles and follow the gesture like a clock face, hitting every number on the face with our awareness of here and here and here and here. And the other direction. So this plastic awareness, it flows with intention and effort, like Robert was mentioning with the eyes. A slight intention and a slight effort can follow a movement. You can bring the hips to stillness and do the opposite. Just tilt over and move the head around in a circle. Different muscles talk to us. This is turning the heavenly pillar. The spine is a pillar. Hold it fairly straight, but the connection down in the hips, let's go the other way. It's so flexible and so malleable in that hip area. There's lots of different movements available. So let's just make it a little more simple and sink and open up the shoulder sockets, sink into the knees like you're sitting on a stool maybe. Move that tailbone back a little bit. Look for that stool and rest and then rise. Lift and open. I discovered yesterday that the Oklahoma legislature wants to regulate people that teach Qigong. I never knew. I needed regulation. This is dangerous stuff, obviously. Humans make things so complicated. All right, release the arms down, cross the wrists. The other thing I learned is that it's probably going to pass. That's kind of scary. You are the Qigong lobby. And dropping the arms back, we open the shoulder sockets a different way. Lifting across, feel the weight shift. Heel comes up, heel places down, and the other heel comes up. So just moving the center of gravity 3 or 4 inches and we're playing a symphony. All the boards in the floor respond. Pressing across. Reach across and focus on palm of your hand. Let the other palm face the earth, and then imagine a cloud moving across the sky. Switch. And as the cloud moves across, the shadow follows. Harmony in heaven and earth, right here. Okay, that's sideways. We're moving back and forth. Now we're going to move forward and back. Reach down and splash in the sea and fall back and lift the toe. Come back and ride the waves. And open the arms, palms up, come forward and turn the wrists. Palms down in the front, palms up at the side. Sort of like a fancy figure eight. And then back to the center, we pause and feel the balance. No boards are squeaking, everything is evenly balanced from left to right. The shoulders relaxed with the arms extending down at ease and relaxed. But there's a pulse. There's a heart beating. There's a rhythm of breath. Then we add the rhythm of movement. Splash in the sea. Change happening in every cell of the body. Riding the waves. Opening the arms, palms up. And back to the center. Short pause to feel the balance. And then we'll put some of these movements together into a more complicated session. Sink, make a fist. Let the dragon rise from the sea. And then up on the toes, we'll spread our wings and fly with the cranes. And then we'll turn a wheel. And switch directions. And back to the center. Lift one hand and one knee, bouncing the ball. And then a full breath. Release all the tension, release all the stress. One breath across the whole room. Whose breath is it? And stillness. Balance, relaxation, so on the 24th of this month, I'm going to stay after the session, the morning session, and have a Qigong half-day retreat from 1:30 to, so we'll say 4:30. I think there's something happening here later. So 1:30 to 4:30 on the 24th. You're invited to join me and work with movement and silent meditation. Maybe I'll bring some Mary Oliver poems. I liked listening to those last week. And hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Sangha. And good morning, everybody out there in internet land. My name is Avi. I'm community coordinator here. And, you know, Jim, I had a thought about what you were saying. You said this is in Oklahoma? Yeah. Oklahoma? Well, you know, because it's Oklahoma, I am going to need it in just a moment, thanks. Because it's Oklahoma, you know, something tells me that Qigong people would be regulated by the Department of Energy, which is a real concern because that's the kind of energy they're used to dealing with. And they would start thinking about pollution controls. They would start thinking about pipelines. They would start thinking about taxing it in order to get people to use it less. So somebody's got to let them know that this is really a green energy initiative. I hope. Okay, all right. Just a few announcements, and before we begin, Michael, you said you had something you wanted to share about Transition Project or some other?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael, and normally you know me as the volunteer that takes your donations of clothing and blankets and toiletries and socks and underwear to people that are unfortunately living on the street right now. I'm also here at the PIMC a member of the Book Circle, and right now we're reading Joanna Macy's World as Lover, World as Self. And we're coming up on chapter 13, and that's titled The Great Turning. And she also has put out a movie called The Great Turning. And I thought that we should open it up and offer it to the whole Sangha. So anyone that would like to come, it's going to be 7 p.m. on February 11th. That's a Monday, a week from tomorrow night. Be right in the living room. And this movie was really special to me. It's only about 28 minutes long, but right after Occupy, I sat that out, and I felt really, really bad. And I said, if an opportunity like this ever comes up again, I need to take advantage of it. And the beauty of the Great Turning is that Joanna Macy, through her wonderful, incredible wisdom, describes the environmental movement that's happening right now. And you don't hear this on the corporate-sponsored media news, but it's intricately described, and it's very, very uplifting. So if there's anyone else like myself that really wants to better understand how they can participate actively in this environmental movement, it might be a great movie for you to attend.
Thank you, Michael.
When is it? 7 p.m. on February 11th.
So this is the regular weekly meeting of the book circle here at PIMC, right?
We're sponsoring the holding of the movie. So
Right, but it's at the book circle. It's on the same. It's on Monday night, which is when the book circle normally meets. Okay. In the last few weeks, we've transitioned the announcements to these very convenient sheets of paper. I know it's old technology, but it's really reliable technology. So if you have an interest in knowing what is going on over the next few weeks, check out one of these flyers, and you'll get it. And if you don't get a flyer, go on our homepage, because most of the time, most of the information about things that's coming up is there on the homepage. And I can highlight a few things for you that are coming up that are of special import. The next meeting of the Engaging the Dharma Initiative is coming up next Sunday on February 10th. That is our initiative to take what we learn on the cushion and to bring it out into the world in terms of mindful action out into the community. And the theme, I believe, is going to be hunger and homelessness. So if you have an interest in being part of a formal PIMC initiative to be more engaged in the community, please join us. You can contact me. You can contact Tricia, who is there in the back. She's raising her hand, and she'd be happy to talk with you about that. We can get you signed up, and that would be really wonderful. We already have a small group of people that are meeting regularly and doing things. And then one other thing that I'd like you to be aware of especially is that we've got a special benefit performance coming up by an actor named Carol Grubman, and she's doing a benefit performance piece for PIMC here at PIMC on Saturday, March 16th. Mark your calendars. She's going to be doing a one-woman show called Force of Nature, which is about the sociological aspects, the political aspects, cultural aspects of childbirth. And that will be for our benefit because she's really impressed with what this community is doing. So mark your calendars for that. Then we have weekly sits. There's information on the website. We have our transitions project. Please bring clothing items in, blankets, socks, anything that would help the homeless, and Michael and his cohorts get it down to the Northwest Transitions Project. And then finally, if you want to engage in this community in a deeper way, please call me. I'm in my office 4 days a week, and you can call me, you can come and see me, you can email me, and I'd be happy to help you get out of this community what you want to get out of it, because this really is your community. You all dream this community into existence. Robert created the seed crystal for it, but you're the ones that keep it going. And in addition to Donna, the way that we keep dreaming this community into existence and the way we keep it going is through engaging in service, through volunteerism here, because there are things that need to get done in order to keep this place feeling like home for us. All kinds of mundane things, like various kinds of cleaning and maintenance. But really, all of that is just an excuse for us to get to know one another. In the act of doing things, we get to know one another. And that makes us stronger as a Sangha. So if you have an interest, if you feel called to spend a little bit of time, maybe it's like 1 or 2 hours a month, sharing your energy and time with PIMC, please see me. Please see Kirsten, she of the raised hand over there, and we would be happy to get you set up as a volunteer. And I want to thank you for your time and for your presence and your caring about this place, because it wouldn't exist without you. Blessings on your day.
Fast. I want to invite you to a couple of more events. Next Saturday, Mary Stankavage is coming from Los Angeles. She's a teacher there, becomes very highly reputed. And she'll be doing a one-day retreat. Is there a title for that, Avi?
It is called... there it is, and I've forgotten. I didn't write it down. But there is, it's on the website. Yes.
Oh, living from an undefended heart, right. Beautiful. And then the following Sunday, Richard Lang is actually coming from London on Thursday to be with us for Saturday, and then he'll be teaching Sunday morning. Richard Lang, who's the descendant of Douglas Harding, who was the creator of the Headless Way. It's a very interesting and potent practice. That the retreat goes from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. There's 2 potluck meals. And the daytime is these experiments in consciousness that Richard leads. And then the evening is 5 rhythms dance from a headless perspective. And it's really, many people who've participated over the years, this is his 4th time, I think, have said that this really changed their practice, that they understood what it meant in a way. In the Buddhist terminology, it's please become aware that you're seeing. And then, so that we begin to realize, oh, what am I? I somehow, if I'm anything, I'm that which knows. And then one of his very early experiments that he'll do, no doubt, is this one, to point around the room, to point at something, to maybe point at, and say inside your mind, light or floor, or point at objects. And then point closer, like knee, clothes, chest. And then point where you think your eyes are. And what's your experience of that at which you're pointing? Is it eyes? Not for me. It's pointing at pure awareness. And he has marvelous ways of helping to come to that realization. So that's the weekend after next. And just to put it in, this is for the women of the community on the first Saturday of March. Christine Howard, who's one of our resident teachers, and Paige Freeborn, who's one of the teachers who went through my training program. They're doing a duo retreat here on that day for women. So that'll be something to be part of. Okay. I want to say thanks also to everyone who volunteers. We have a very strong cadre of volunteers, and these flowers appear so beautifully, and the carpets are vacuumed, and the bathrooms are clean, and it's really quite something. This creation of community. And the piece of the Dharma that I want to speak about today is very relevant in community. It has to do with the third, fourth, and fifth factors of the Eightfold Path, which is moral and ethical behavior, our sila, it's called in the Pali language, which is what the early Buddhism teachings are written down in. So I want to start with a poem. So far today, God, I've done all right. Haven't gossiped, haven't lost my temper. I haven't been greedy or grumpy, nasty or self-centered. I really am glad about that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And then I'm going to need a lot of help. Part of what I've been thinking to talk about this now for, I should put my timer out so I can see it. There we go. In the Eightfold Path, it starts with wise understanding about the Four Noble Truths, the Four Ennobling Truths, the law of karma, the three characteristics of existence: everything's impermanent, unsatisfactory, and that there really isn't a self, ultimately, when we really look deeply. What there is the universe unfolding. So that's a skillful worldview, and then from that worldview comes an aspiration. If that's true, how then do I want to behave? How do I want to think about my life and my actions? And it's through a very interesting filter, which is, if this action is rooted in greed, hatred, or ignorance, I think I want to not do it. If this action, this impulse that's arising, is rooted in loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, generosity, then I think I want to do that. So it's kind of an overarching, I shorten it down to, I'd like to be a Buddha when I grow up. So that that's how I want to shape my life. And then, if we have that worldview and that intention, how do I operationalize them? Right? How do I make those intentions real in my life? And that's where the realm of the precepts come in. That's the overarching part I want to speak about today, which means skillful speech. How to use speech in such a way that it creates healing and connection and harmony rather than conflict, tension, catastrophe. Actions. What about my other actions? How shall I look upon my actions such that I can develop a happier life? And then my livelihood. But part of what's prompting me to talk about this is the example that we're having in our time of the degradation of public discourse. That when people in positions of great power don't practice skillful speech, it has giant effects, right? The amount of bullying in the schools has gone way up, and attacks on GLBTQ people and murders arise because of the way people speak. And this isn't new, of course. Right? The Buddha taught about skillful speech because all the same things that are happening now happened in his time. And it's not just exactly what's happening now. Political discourse in general, and the discourse in the media and in our music a lot, I shudder sometimes to think that this is what our young people are being. This is how grown-ups act, is what the kids see. And it's bad modeling. And we are creatures who model ourselves on others. In fact, funny memory I'm having, my son who's now 37, and he and his fiancée are awaiting their second child in 2 weeks. When he was really little, there was a moment, it's funny, it sticks. He was maybe 3, 4, I forget. And I'd watched a movie about how chimps, I think it was, mimic the behavior of others. And I noticed I was saying goodbye to him from the garage, and I waved to him and said goodbye, and I wavered my voice a little bit or something. He did exactly the same thing, and I thought, oh my God, he's doing that with my moods, he's modeling everything on me. So that it makes the standard kind of high, that we are affecting the people around us all the time by our energetic modeling and our behavioral modeling. So, if you pull out Exhibit A, the 5 precepts. I grew up, as I presume many or most of you did, with the 10 Commandments. And they cover the same territory as the 5 precepts, but they do it really differently, in my experience. That the 5 precepts are understood to be guidelines, consciousness-raising vehicles. And so that we can go through our lives, and as we act, if we're in any circumstance that's morally ambiguous, we can then observe our behavior and see, did my acting in this way result in my happiness, contentment, ease, well-being, ease of connection with others, or did it result in tension, confusion, shame, remorse? So I think, how should I do this? I think I'll just simply. Mostly when you run into the precepts, they are the articulation of the restraints, what not to do. There is an implied and sometimes spoken in the Buddhist teachings positive side to them. But it isn't commonly chanted, for instance. And years ago, when I think it was before we had this, it was more than 20, 25 years ago, I created a positive statement for each one. And then for a long time, we chanted them every Sunday. But I want to go through them just one at a time and see how they hit you. I undertake the rule of training, which is sometimes translated as, and I think I like the other better now, I undertake the training of the heart. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking the life of any living being. Imagine, this is a quote of Ajahn Sumedho, one of my great heroes in the Buddhist world. Imagine how different the world would be if all humans would take this as, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking the life of any human being. If that was it. It's the end of war. Now, we humans are prone to significant violence. It's not an accident, something that most people don't imagine, but at the time of the Buddha, there was lots of war going on. At the time of his death, one of his great supporters had been he was a king, King Bimbisara, had been killed by his son who was ready to accede to the throne. And the Buddha was told to get out, 82 years old or so, told to leave, and there he was traveling through North India on his way to somewhere, they don't know where, when he was sick, and he had got food poisoning and died, but in the midst of a war. So there really wasn't a gold. There have been periods of golden age. I think we've lived through one in the last 40 years, somewhat, for some of us in this culture. But we have this tendency to create fantasies and images and ideologies, and then to fight over resources. Or to destroy our resources such that we have to become expansionist in order to support our standard of living. And that was true with the Greeks and the Romans. And when the farms at home aren't producing enough food, then one tends to go out and conquer. Or when there isn't enough oil at home or whatever, we become imperialist forces. So I undertake, if we take it home here to ourselves, I undertake the rule of training, or the training of the heart, to refrain from taking the life of any living being. So that means to become really conscious of it when we're killing. Can't drive a car without killing. Can't eat even as a vegetarian without killing the bugs and so on. That we're part of life and we live on other life. I forget where it is. I guess it's on robertbeatty.com. There's a story called Killing Ratty. And we had rats in our house, and I decided we were going to tolerate them. And then one ran across my daughter's foot in her bedroom, and then we decided we had to get rid of them. So I bought live traps. They weren't interested in the live traps. And then I bought the rat zapper, which is a battery-operated thing that electrocutes them. And then it took a few days, but then there was Ratty. And I spent time and meditated and buried Ratty really nicely. And then I thought maybe there might be one more. There were 7 more. Right? And I became more and more callous. It became easier and easier to kill them. Because that's how it is. So one of the purposes of this rule of training, or training of the heart, is to not become callous. Right? The Dharma hall's full of fleas, or this building got full of fleas a couple of years ago. We had great trouble with it. Well, we called the exterminator. But it's kind of like a little sadness. It's like I don't like doing this, but we're going to. The positive statement, which I really like, is I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. It's the opposite of killing. Oh, can I do this? There's enough time, maybe. I practiced as a monk for a little while in India. After 6 weeks, I got kidney stones, and ultimately I came home. But during that time, I was involved in a murder. I was sitting in my little meditation hut, and there was this sound from the door. Any time of the day or night, and I got really quiet, and this sound became really irritating, and and in the end, I had my Swiss Army knife, and so I listened and I listened, and then I just thought I'd see what it was, And in the end, I wound up cutting this little worm that was inside my door that had one tooth. And so I put him on my altar and I watched him die. And it was heavy. I was very sensitized. I was doing about 16 hours a day of sitting and walking. And I went to my preceptor and told him what I'd done. And he thought I was kind of nuts, of course. And then I did have a little funeral for my murder object. But I had to take my precepts again because. And why did I kill that little creature? It was bugging me. Right? Who's in my space, that's the motive. The second one, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. That's really beautifully worded. And the more deeply we get into practice and get sensitized, we realize those little things that we're taking that are not freely given. I want to go back. I missed a step in this talk. One level of the reasoning for why to follow the precepts is that we suffer less. We have less conflict. The society works better. When we can trust each other, when we can trust each other to not go to violence, we can engage more fully. I just had a memory of being with Robert Bly and Michael Meade and James Hillman and 120 men in a camp in California, Mendocino. And Michael Meade has, I think, I'm sure, this capacity to take conflict, and he says, let's not avoid it, let's deepen it. And so with 4 men sitting on one side of this long room drumming, and a strip of masking tape on the floor, he had us take sides. Those men who had gone to Vietnam, and there was one man there who had been an assassin and had killed many, many people, and those men who had not gone to Vietnam or who were opposed to Vietnam. And there was no sitting on the fence. I was Canadian, and so I said, and he said, got to pick a side. And then they deepened the conflict. And there were guys standing on tables and shouting at each other, but it was so clear there will be no violence, but we're going to take this conflict to its root. And the common experience of all these men was shame. There was the shame of, I didn't go and fight when I felt like, part of me felt like I should have, and the shame of, I went and killed people wantonly. And it was such a connecting experience, but there was this clear agreement, there will be no violence. We can feel whatever we feel, and express it even, but we won't hurt each other. So that's a social level of the usefulness of the precepts. And then there's the personal spiritual level. There's one more social level, which is that if we can trust each other. Imagine if we never locked our door when I was a kid. I lived in the suburbs in Montreal, and there were other places in the country or even in that city where one did. But, and also many years ago, I was in Bali. It was before tourism became popular. I actually got there down Java by train, and then I rode a landing craft across, a military craft to Bali. And talking with people, there was no theft. Theft was unknown because everyone knew everybody. And if some kid showed up with something that they'd stolen, they'd be in deep doo-doo. So then, getting to the point I'm trying to get to, which is, if we've, and this is worthy of testing, if we've done actions which are not in keeping with the precepts, it agitates us. Right? If we lie, then we have to lie again. Or if we've done some harm, there's something in us that doesn't do well with that. And as we meditate, and meditate more deeply, we'll start noticing that. As Ruth Denison put it so beautifully several times, Dalink, once you have the Dharma, you can no longer get away with yourself. I often think of this story when I talk about this. Theft was really not an issue for me as a child. But in graduate school, I experimented. I stole a salad. And it was exciting, and it was in the tunnels down under the university in Toronto. And I told my friends about it. I stole something. It was kind of exciting. And then I wound up on retreat several years later, And I remembered stealing that salad, and it tortured me for several days. I had to go to my preceptor, and I did this. And then a couple of years after that, I was in Toronto when I went and paid for it. And the manager thought I was totally out of my tree, but it was a relief. It's like this. So making amends is really part of cleaning up our inner act. And the point I'm trying to get to, if you want to enter meditation and be at ease and not have to fend off anything like remorse from inside, or if you're not afraid that someone's going to come after you, then you can relax. And the freedom of awakening arises through relaxation. I have nothing to defend, therefore I can relax. And in that relaxation, sometimes it becomes apparent, oh, I'm really part of everything. There are no enemies. Right? I don't have enemies because I'm actually the universe. So going on. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. I aspire to become generous to all beings. Generosity. This wonderful action of mine or ours? Mine, ours. Again, it's moving out of fear into more openness. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. There's the three rules of living beings when they encounter another one. Do I have to fight them? Do I eat them? Or do I act sexually with them? Primitive, but part of us. And this is always fun to ask. I have really made a mess in my life once or twice over sexuality. Have you? I invite you to raise your hand if you've made a mess. Yeah. Why? Because we go crazy. Right? This is the prime directive. Keep the DNA moving. And so it takes the little ego that said, oh no, I've made my vows, or I've done this, and I'm not going to do that. And then you come back to your senses and realize, what was that? So it's because it's potent. That's one of the reasons we have precepts, and they're in every spiritual religious tradition. There's some way, there's some codification of travel this way and your hands will be burned. Right? You will be in deep pain. Or travel this way and you'll feel better. So sexuality. Is this act which is arising in the desire nature, is it going to hurt another person or another person's? Is it going to violate a commitment I've made? Is it going to hurt me? And that, of course, this is that same reflection can happen also in committed relationship. That sometimes we're sexual in ways or in emotional states where it's like, this is not the right thing for me, but I will accede to it and then have resentment or hurt or... So it's part of that whole, the whole notion of consent, which stays with us through our lives. How many of you have seen that really fine little British consent video about the cup of tea? Oh my goodness, many of you haven't. Wow. YouTube, I think if you typed in consent cup of tea, it's fascinating. Because, I mean, it says things like, these are funny little line drawings and then the voiceover. If you go to your friend's house and a friend comes to your house and you offer them a cup of tea and they'd like a cup of tea, well, great, give them a cup of tea. But if while you're making the cup of tea, they fall asleep. Don't pour the tea down their throat. Or if they wanted a cup of tea yesterday and they say, no, thank you, I don't want a cup of tea today, then don't force them to have a cup of tea. It's very interesting how it simplifies the question and gives all of us consent and autonomy. The positive statement of that one, I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. That word libido, that life energy, which can manifest as making love or acting sexually, can also make music, can make art, can make dancing, can make connecting with each other in so many ways. So to use that amazing energy of life in the direction of love, relationship, and beauty. The fourth, I undertake the rule of training, the training of the heart, to refrain from false and harmful speech. I'm going to come back to speech. Number 5, I undertake the rule of training, or training of the heart, to refrain from the use of intoxicants which dull the mind. I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. Intoxication is normal for us human beings. There's a very useful book that I've shared with many people who have been working with drug and alcohol issues called The Natural Mind by health food guru, big Andrew Weil, yeah. Before Andrew Weil became Mr. Health Food, he was the person who went around the world and did psychotropic medications with all the shamans, and he became very versed in how they work. And he worked in Haight-Ashbury with people having bad trips and so on. And he got very interested in Buddhism. And one of the essence of the book is, ordinary reality is painful. It's the Buddha, First Noble Truth. We humans must have altered states. Children get altered states by spinning, if not by some other way. We must have altered states, so why don't we pick carefully how we alter our states? You know, skiing, skydiving, reading, and there are ways that we alter our state that result in the war on drugs, or that provoke that madness. These things. Have you, those of you that have Apple products, have you tried that amazing thing? It keeps track of how much time you spend on your phone and on what programs, and how many times a day you pick up your phone? Now this one doesn't count because I picked it up as a demonstration, but it's pretty interesting. And I watch in myself. When do I do it? Last year, 3 times, and actually I have one coming up in late February. I take a week of personal retreat. And I put away my phone, and I take a news fast. It's remarkable how difficult it is. How many times a day the impulse to check the news, check the email, check that. And it even over just a few days, it diminishes remarkably, and then it's such a relief. But that's an addiction, right? There's a little dopamine hit that comes by doing that, and particularly if you have any of those notifications on. Because, so, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from the use of intoxicants. Our culture, and all cultures, it puts intoxication on a very high value. Shelf space in grocery stores is really expensive. I know the potato chip companies fight over 3 inches. I mean, it's a big deal. And at the New Seasons where I shop, there's at least 2 rows of wine. And it all sells, right? And Portland, every second block, there's a pot dispensary now. How they are staying in business, I don't know. Though there's actually some difficult economic news for the pot world here, that there is enough stock, merchandise, for 6 years already. What's going to happen to all those growers? Some of them put millions of dollars into growing facilities and they don't know what to do with it. So, and I guess important to say here, this isn't a you better not or you'll be in trouble. It's not a deity telling us don't do this. It's our own experience. And so we're always free, and we do. Experiment. If you want to do this and it's really pulling, then do it, but with your eyes open, and notice what the consequence is. Notice how it feels. Notice what happens between you and other people. And the positive statement of this is, I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. I aspire to train this mind to do those actions which result in this mind being awake, being luminous, being without remorse, of strengthening concentration and mindfulness. So, speech. Have I got time, or should I do it next week? Let me see. Oh, 48, yes. I'm debating, maybe pause, see what feedback there is, rather than rushing ahead. I think I will do that and come back to speech the next time I'm giving a talk. Though, let me just list these. The prohibitions, the things that cause really problems: false speech, lying, deception. Slander or malicious speech, calling people names to hurt, divide people, or injure their reputation. Harsh, rude, rough words that disturb the mind, or idle chatter. Frivolous, trivial, wasteful speech, gossip, or purposeless chatter, which of course is the media, right? Almost in its entirety. In fact, Jennifer sent me I can't remember if it was a video or just think that I now imagine was a video, but it's two men talking, and one of them is saying, well, you didn't seem to be sportsing as well as you usually do today, and or that we really weren't sportsing very well. And you can put any sport in. It's the same conversation, always. Right? It's idle chatter. We watch it and listen to it. And then I will come back to this. So to restrain ourselves from lies, from slander, from harsh speech, from idle chatter, and then the positive, skillful speech. Where'd it go? I had a nice list. Oh, here we are. This is from the suttas. Possessing these 5 factors, speech is well spoken, is not badly spoken, and is blameless and beyond reproach to the wise, by the wise. What are these 5 characteristics? What is spoken at the proper time. What is said is true. It's spoken gently. What is said is beneficial, and it is spoken with the mind of loving kindness. So I'll come back to that because we have to rush. So what do you think? How does this strike you? Is it helpful to codify these like this? And might you take these papers with you too? You don't need to steal them. They're yours. I really like the pens at my doctor's office. And they're advertising pens, and they're supposed to be given, I mean, their purpose is to be given away. But I always ask, because it feels better. And if you start doing that, you notice some very interesting things that's like, well, if I got noticed, they wouldn't like it, but I don't care. And that's the little knot. And so So, any comment, question, reaction? Please. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a quick note to anyone regarding the fifth precept. If anyone, or you know of anyone, is struggling with addiction issues, there is a meditation-based community in the world, throughout Portland, that meets several times per week. It's called Refuge Recovery. It's grounded in meditation and Noble Eightfold Path as a method for helping with the situation.
And our Gary Sanders, who teaches here, is very deeply involved in that as part of the founding of it. He teaches on Tuesday nights. Oh, way in the back. Please say your name, okay, when you get the mic.
My name is Lydia, and I am new here, but I've been percolating on a question for a few weeks in terms of systemic harm. So I just had an issue where I switched banks because I didn't want to be part of the major banking issues and all the things that they invest in. And that bank, actually, the new one, the more ethical one, caused me quite a lot of harm in the way that it was running its business and not answering questions. So now I'm forced to go back to the bank that is investing in things like global warming causing issues. So I don't know how to reconcile it ethically between my own personal need to be able to, have funds and the systemic harm that that need is causing. I would love any insight you have.
I don't quite understand. The first bank invests in big oil.
Right.
The second bank's doing what?
They are ethical and they say that they invest in community and refrain from anything in big oil.
But they're poorly run.
They're poorly run, and they caused me to lose 150 points in my credit score and $200 in fees and all sorts of terrible things, and would not answer the phone.
Right.
Which is far too much detail. But basically, it's causing me harm, and they aren't able
Right.
to do
Do
good.
you-
I could have used those funds to do something useful, like donate here.
Do you live in a world with only two banks?
That is a good question. But let's say I move to another one and another one. How much time and effort can I give to that when I could give to that time and effort to causes like the transition projects?
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, yeah. I guess it's that we just do the best we can. And I don't feel very good about the big banks either. One of the big banks actually, I think I can say these words, stole $150,000 from my former partner and I, through nefarious means, and they had received a phone call saying what was happening, and they denied that they had received it, and so they made off with it was in the crash in 2008. They made off with a house in which we had a major piece of our life savings as equity, and there was really nothing to be done, and I mean there was really bad acting on the part of the big banks. And there still is. I mean, so I actually, that's one of the places where I've had to do some inner work. That it's like, and it's hurting only me, right? So I've done a fair amount of, and I wound up actually going to two different banks ultimately, and then I found my way at a credit union that I feel well cared for and. It's personal again, somewhat. But it can take a lot of effort to do that, and so I guess we just do the best we can. And though I guess there could be some things that if I found out that something that I was dealing an organization I was dealing with was dealing in gun stocks or something like that, I think I'd reach a point where I have to say, even at at some significant expense, I won't do that. But it's all these true moral and ethical dilemmas are blurry. When it wouldn't be a moral and ethical dilemma if it wasn't awkward. And the more poignant, the more awkward. A long time ago, before my kids were born, my wife and I, my first wife and I, conceived a child, and then at 12 weeks she got German measles, rubella, and her mother had rubella and had her baby die at 7 weeks or something, and a whole complicated thing happened. We in the end had to make a choice at 5 months. Will she give birth to this child who will be seriously deformed and will die within a few weeks after birth, or will we end this pregnancy? Tore us up, right? And in the end, we did decide we would end the pregnancy, but it was very. There wasn't a good solution. There wasn't a good answer. And so the way that argument goes to sides. You're wrong and you're wrong. Doesn't touch into the heart of the circumstance. That it's. I feel sad. My first little boy. Born, ended. But that's life, that's and we could have gone the other way with a different value system and it's hard. This being a human is really a tough thing. And fortunately, we have the precepts. And we have the realization, well, if I act in this way, there will be a consequence. And lo and behold, with that action, there's been a consequence. And had we acted in a different way, there would have been a different consequence. So, may we all have banking issues to toil over. May we be so fortunate as to have something we can put in the bank, too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura. So I have a question about the speech. I know you said that you were going to focus more on that next week.
It won't be. Mary Stankavich is here next week, and then Richard is here. Then it'll be the week 3 weeks hence.
Okay. Well, regarding the precept on speech, so I don't think I'm the only person who's experienced like cognitive dissonance with another person. Especially like when they know how to really get your buttons and they want to get a rise out of you, and
right.
And just trying to respond with like, I'm not going to argue, like, sorry, not going to argue, but I still get like very like irritated. I'm a human, and so I don't know like what like an appropriate way, because I don't want to just be like, it is a satisfying feeling. It is a satisfying feeling to be like, no, I'm not arguing, and then like the conversation is now over because I'm not going to like give you what you want, which is a rise. But even though that conversation is over and I'm here with myself now, I want to like process this. I'm angry, this hurt my feelings, like, and I want to like immediately what I think to do is call somebody else and be like, this. Like, like say all of this stuff and just kind of unload it. But kind of like what you were saying about having that, like, I don't really like, and it's not even that I think that the person, because the person that I'm confiding this in knows that this is just venting. But it still makes me feel like, am I processing this incorrectly? Is there a better way to process while still being able to unload, but not, playing up all of this negative energy?
This lovely woman sitting on the end of the row here with the new sparkles in her hair, Kirsten, is one of two people here at PIMC who teach nonviolent communication. They do classes here, and it was extreme. I've done a little bit of training myself in nonviolent communication, and it was so helpful to me to learn how to develop the internal empathy to deal with, to be able to say, I'd like to talk more, but I can't right now because I'm starting to get flooded. I'll be back in 10 minutes, but I need to take care. I need some compassion for myself here. I'm going to go take care of it, which might mean talking to someone else, looking for compassion, not just to whine or complain or build my case, but to help me calm down. And PIMC, of course, has built strategies of helping us calm down. But then also learning how to skillfully express anger, and how to do it in such a way that then might lead to a better outcome. That's really helpful. So the Buddhist teachings on speech are, by my view, inadequate. They're good, but Marshall Rosenberg, with nonviolent communication, took it another 20 paces. So that to teach us actually how to really speak when we're really internally upset, or when we're really in conflict with another person or persons, how to actually have conversation that leads somewhere. And I did several weekends with him when he was alive and coming through town, and he told stories of being with Palestinians and Israelis and Hutu and Tutsi, sometimes that the people in the group knew that someone in the other group killed their child. And he managed to get them to find their common humanity and to find some dropping of the projections and a resolution of the issue. So there are skills to learn. And it's not it can't be simply always accepting everything, and there will be conflict. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
As far as I'm Jenna. As far as the first precept.
Can you hold that closer, my dear? Thank
Yeah.
you.
On the first precept, you were talking about how if you're kind of in your own and practicing nonviolence and ahimsa, and that you are the universe experiencing itself, I would be protected. And that's kind of how that works, because I'm manifesting my own reality in that sense. That's what I kind of understood that to mean as you were saying that. I could be wrong. Because I'm in a situation right now where taking all the appropriate actions has potentially put my life in danger. And I'm trained in martial arts, trained to protect myself, and it's not even about that. It's about the mindset that I've been put in, about being on edge, and it's amazing what the brain does when one's at this point of breaking. It kind of escapes reality, and I've been doing that subtly. But there was some ease. With this, there's nothing to fear if I have the intention of nonviolence. And I was wondering if there's any truth to that. Or
That's a little hard to understand, but the one thing that you use that word manifesting our own reality, this is not a teaching that says what we think comes to be. That's the opposite direction. I have a particular dislike of, there's a little book called The Secret, and I think of that as very dangerous, wrong view. That's not how it works. The intentions, if I want something to become, I need to form the intention, and then I need to take the steps to make that happen. It's not that the thoughts go out and through the universe and vibrate and then they manifest the thing. So I think our thoughts are very important. But sometimes it's really necessary to protect ourselves. One thing that Achan Semedo said very clearly was, my aspiration is to love everyone and to throw no one out of my heart. That doesn't mean I won't call the police. That doesn't mean I won't get a restraining order. That doesn't mean I might not defend myself physically if a person attacked me. But I'm not sure that's what you're asking. It's not.
It's more about the mindset of somebody practicing nonviolence as a way of almost spiritual protection.
Aha.
And when you were talking about, the eyes and past and beyond the eyes, this is the consciousness of reality, expressing that as this being that practices nonviolence. Is she somehow protected in that sense?
Okay, I'm getting a meaning there.
I don't like The Secret either.
It's a very profound question that what I'm hearing, which is, if what I really am, or you really are, is the vast infinite universe presenting itself as awareness through this living being, we have two levels of reality. We have the relative, where a being comes into being and it lives a lifetime and then disappears. And then we have the absolute, where it's all just cosmic dust. And the Tibetans speak of it very clearly as if you could remember it, attachment to view. No, it's not attachment to view. It's getting lost in the view that we can say, "Oh, I am the infinite universe. Therefore, I can walk in front of this bus. Therefore, I'm not." And people get lost in places like this. Therefore, I don't need to take the precautions to take care of myself, because in this dangerous circumstance, because I have great faith. And that's a misunderstanding of the teaching. That there is this separate, vulnerable, precious, one of a kind ever in the universe being. But if that being can also have one little toe in the realization, and this is my personality, but it's not my fundamental being, then life is different. But it doesn't mean that we don't immunize our children or take proper precautions to take care of ourselves. And is that making sense?
Yeah, this experience of not equanimity but numb, I'm oscillating between these two states, and the right view helps me stay equanimous with my actions in life. So I appreciate that dialogue.
And I've had the incredible privilege of being in therapy for 40 years and being a psychotherapist. And that's infused my teaching. And I believe it to be essential to honor and embrace the wounded part of ourselves, and to do the grieving that we need to do, and to protect ourselves from harm. at the same time as we're opening into the realization that it's really all okay anyway. But that the form is emptiness, emptiness is form. There is form. There is a person, and she, he, they must be protected. And in the cosmic big picture, 14.2 billion years, and we live maybe a maximum. The oldest person on Earth died a couple of weeks ago. He was 109. But in terms of planetary time, it's nothing. But that person was one of a kind, as is each of us, and of ultimate value. So how to honor that in ourselves? One of the spiritual problems people run into is they start to meditate, and it supports their sense of, oh, nothing matters. You know, I can do whatever I want, or I don't need to worry about the fact that I can't take care of myself or my child or something. And that's a mistaken view, I believe.
Thank
So
you.
I hope you stay safe.
Thank you.
One of the times I was practicing in Asia, there was a Cambodian monk who had incredible concentration, and we would be in the meditation hall at the same time, and he would sit for hours, just hours. And however, he always looked like he was in pain. I mean, hours. He'd sit for 6 hours, a long time. And I found out near the end of my stay that he had seen all his brothers killed. He'd been, part of the Pol Pot catastrophe. And we didn't have a common language, but what it seemed to me, and this was before I became a therapist, but it looked to me like he had learned how to go into kind of a dull, maybe a very highly refined trance state, but he had not done any of the emotional work. And he was kind of a zombie. So that's a misuse, I think, or maybe not a misuse, maybe it was exactly what he needed to do given the catastrophe he'd witnessed, and the support he had. Well, I'm surprised there hasn't been rustling at the door. Would you check and see? Oh, they're in there. Oh, I'm going on and on. Oh, well. So thank you so much for the questions and comments, and I'll be here for a little while. Please do come and join us for tea, cookies, etc. And also, if you're new, those of you that have been here for a long time, maybe poke your antennas up, and if there's someone new sitting alone, see if you can engage them. All right, here we go. Thank you.
More about like staying centered.
Battery failure. Hi. May I hold your pinky? Thank you. Maybe we could bump elbows or something. I can't hold your hand because of this. So please, dear friends, become aware of your hand touching, connecting. How fortunate that we have hands. How incredible we have bodies. So this person on your right is a one-of-a-kind only ever. What would you wish? What would your prayer be for them? If you could be totally generous. What will you fill your consciousness with in terms of wishing for this person? Give that hand a little squeeze, and then to the person on your left, give that hand a squeeze. What would you wish for them? What if they really are another manifestation of you? What would you wish for them then? And then sending this energy around our circles and out into the homes around us, and to the north and the south and the east and the west, above us and below us, to all beings. May all beings share in the merits of our practice. And please remember your teachers and mentors, all those people who have held you aloft on their shoulders. And now we have someone to sing. Yay, okay, here's the microphone.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right. Does everyone know what comes next? No? Well, I'm going to count from one, not yet. This is the practice, 1, 2, 3, and then we blow. We blow out the candle. But we also think of a wish first. What would you wish for? All right. And everyone in the room, of course, gets to participate. You all have to take a deep breath. And everyone at home and the internet. Are you ready? Breathing in. 1, 2, 3, blow. Whoa, it was windy in here. That was great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And do join us for tea and goodies and conversation. Thanks to those of you that joined us on the net. And see you soon. I will be here next Sunday as well, but I won't be teaching.